Thousands of participants at Africa's first ever climate summit gathered in Kenya's capital, Nairobi, to chart the way forward for the continent ahead of COP28 summit in Dubai later in the year. By the second day of the summit, 18 presidents and representatives from other countries were in Kenya for a dialogue seeking to have Africa speaking one voice at the global stage on issues affecting the continent related to climate change. As the opening of the summit was taking place at KICC, civil society groups were marching on the streets of Nairobi, calling for a sober conversation which put the lives of those affected by climate change at the center of discussions.
Acting time! Acting time!
By civil society organization, we are not 100% satisfied. We are not 100% happy because our expectation by coming here were very high.
People that were making decisions were in air-conditioned rooms, and I believe they must have forgotten that there are people who are living in communities that are facing drought, that are facing poor crop yields. Currently in Uganda, the rainfall is very poor. And of yesterday, as I speak, we had heavy rains. People's houses the roofs have flown off. All these are challenges. And what our government is doing, it is to give them handouts. We don't need handouts.
$3 billion annually for adaptation for the $12 billion program that he believes is essential in order to be able to do our part to adapt to this challenge.
The presence of U.S. Special Presidential Envoy for Climate John Kerry at the summit was faulted by some civil groups who felt that the summit should have been left to Africans alone to discuss issues affecting them. President William Ruto, who is the chair of the Committee of African Heads of State and Government on Climate Change, was lauded for a job well done in collaboration with the African Union, who are the co-hosts of the summit for the first time in 31 years since the beginning of climate change discussions globally.
Your presence has sent an emphatic signal throughout the world that a new Africa is here and that it means business.
It was highly needed for Africa to have a collective voice, particularly when you go to global stages such as COP. So I would like also to congratulate the government of Kenya and President Ruto for convening this, also with the assistance of African Union.
And thankful to the Kenyan president and the people of Kenya for a successful hosting. Back home, we're going to download whatever we've got in here to the grassroots to make our nations, our peoples, the grassroots people, particularly women and children, also to appreciate the climate conversation globally.
It's almost like a new energy we have now to address the issues head on, and we have also the support of leadership and the world, because this is not a conversation we can have in isolation. This is a conversation for everybody, but it should be by everybody, and I think that is what we've successfully achieved here.
At the KICC, meetings after meetings took place. Side events focusing on issues affecting the continent were held.
One of the ways is ensuring that the solutions that we are offering are more sustainable, accessible to the communities that we are targeting.
After 3 days of deliberations, the African Nairobi Declaration on Climate Change and Call for Action was announced.
We are therefore determined to have difficult conversations, take hard decisions, and make uncomfortable changes to set international consensus on an Afrocentric and globally inclusive path into an African future.
Having been here the whole week and as part of EVOS and Voices for Just Climate Action, we had a number of expectations. And when we saw the draft declaration that came out, there were some attempts to address some of the glaring issues that we've been making noise about.
The Nairobi Declaration report highlights some of the issues affecting the continent, among them recognizing that Africa is not historically responsible for global warming, but bears the brunt of its effects, impacting lives, livelihoods, and economies. Drought, flooding, locust invasion, crop failure, and other effects of global warming in the continent. It also noted concern that 600 million people in Africa still lack access to electricity, while about 970 million lack access to clean cooking, leading to negative health impacts on communities.
Since we have a lot of renewable energy sources in Africa that can be promoted, we want more investment in renewable energy in Africa. And that is what we are pushing for.
More than 400 million people in Africa have no access to clean drinking water and 700 million without good sanitation, the report notes. Among other issues in the report is that African cities and urban centers are growing rapidly and by the year 2050 would be home to over 1 billion people. This could lead to increase in people's exposure and vulnerability to hazards and have thus turned cities into disaster hotspots across the continent.
Tunasema sasa hapo masuala ya loss and damage. Mambo kama hii ya mazingira, effects kama hizi za climate, nani anafaa kulipia? Wanafaa kukompensetiwa na nani? Juu sana sana wamekuwa wakiwachwa peke yao katika hiyo hali. Sasa ndio masuala kama hao tunaangazia, na sana sana kuangazia masuala ya climate katika mitaa ya mabanda, katika cities. Na zamani, miaka zamani, miji mikuu ndio ilikuwa inalaumiwa kwa mambo ya pollution, lakini sasa pia sisi tumepatikana.
The report is calling for international community to honor the commitment to provide $100 billion in annual climate finance as promised in 2009 at the UNFCCC COP15 in Copenhagen, Denmark. It also urges global leaders to join Africa in seizing this unprecedented opportunity to accelerate global decarbonization, which means an economy based on energy sources that produce low levels of greenhouse gas emission while pursuing equality and shared prosperity. To strengthen actions to halt and reverse biodiversity loss, deforestation and desertification. The summit has been touted as a great opportunity for Africa to speak in one voice ahead of this year's COP28 in Dubai. Dan Kaburu, K24, Nairobi.